Perek Aleph, Mishnah Gimel. So the Mishnah opens up with a small introduction, really referencing back to the psicha, the introduction to the Masechta. And that is that when one is redeeming his peros, his fruit of Ma'aser Sheni, for one reason or another, he can't bring it to Yerushalayim, so he puts it onto money. So, but the main Ma'aser Sheni, this money, you can use it and purchase lokum, you can buy in Yerushalayim, behemos, animals, as a carbon shlamim. And the Mefarshim explain, Shekachi ikar mitzvah, so the main mitzvah of the money of Ma'aser Sheni is to bring with it zivchei shlamim, carbon shlamim. And with regards to a carbon shlamim, so the chelvam, the fats and the bloods is burnt on the mizbeach, but the butts or the meat could be eaten in Yerushalayim, has to be eaten in Yerushalayim, nechal b'Yerushalayim, l'chol adam, to anybody, meaning the owners themselves of the animals would eat the meat from this carbon, and they'd have 2 days and 1 night to eat it. And we had also learned that with the money of Ma'aser Sheni, a person could buy any kind of food in Yerushalayim and eat it there as well. That also works. So the Mishnah is going to discuss now that what happens when someone buys an animal, or he buys a bottle of wine. So what's the halacha of the leather of the animal, or of the jug of the wine? Because those are parts of the purchase that are not food, and yet you used money for Ma'aser Sheni. So what happens to it? So let's see. It says the Mishnah Gimel, halokeach behema. One who purchases a behema, a domesticated animal, with money of Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim, lezivchei shlamim, he purchases it for a carbon shlamim, like we explained. Or the purchaser bought a chaya, a wild animal. A wild animal one cannot bring as a carbon. He buys a deer. He can't bring a deer as a carbon. So he buy it lebasar taiva, just for taiva, for your own pleasure, which is fine. The shechted for chulin, for non-secret purposes, just to eat it and enjoy. The pasuk says in Devarim, ki sa'av v'nafshecha le'achal basar. It's the taiva, the pleasure of the soul to eat meat. You can do that, it's okay. So it says the Mishnah, Yatza ha'ar lechulin. In both of these scenarios, the leather of the animal is non-sacred. The kedusha of the Ma'aser Sheni, even though you're using money of Ma'aser Sheni, is not chal, does not take effect on the leather. Not only that, not only is the leather staying non-sacred, you can use it for your leather jacket, whatever you want to do, but more than that, you don't have to start calculating what was leather worth. Now let me take that value and buy with it food and eat in Yerushalayim because I still owe my Ma'aser Sheni that value. Nah, we're lenient like that. We're okay with that. And afal pisha are meruba alabasar. Even if the value of the leather is going to cost you more than the value of the meat of the animal, nevertheless, ein ha'ar nitbas b'kedusha Ma'aser Sheni. The leather does not be tofes. It doesn't grab the kedusha of the Ma'aser Sheni, only the meat alone. And therefore, you can use the leather for whatever you want, and you do not have to compensate your Ma'aser Sheni account for that which you spent on the leather. The Mishnah says further, Kadeh yayin, stumos. One who purchases with money of Ma'aser Sheni jugs of wine that are stumos b'megufa, they are sealed with a lid. Makom shedarkani macher setumos, in a place where it was normal to sell jugs of wine like that, in the jug sealed. Yasad kankan lechulin. This kankan, this jug, is not nitpas. It does not grab the din of the kedusha of Ma'aser Sheni. Ve'ein tzarach l'macher. You don't have to sell it and eat according to its value. It's in Yerushalayim. Meaning you keep the value of the jug. Again, the same halach. We're going to be lenient. We don't say, sell the jug and take that money and buy with it, fruit and eat that in Yerushalayim. There's no need. Though they point out, halokeach behema, one who buys a domesticated animal, okadiyayin, or jugs of wine, misocher, from a merchant, shuhu yodeya, he knows the meishav, he knows the value of the leather of the domesticated animal, the behema, or he knows the value of the jug holding this wine. And the merchant most certainly included it in the price when he was setting the mechira, when he was setting this purchase for them. So then, if that's the case, lo yatza'ar, the leather does not go to chulin, the jug does not go to chulin, and you would have to compensate your Ma'aser Sheni account if you were buying it specifically from a merchant, because a merchant is going to calculate everything in the sale, and then one would have to compensate his Ma'aser Sheni account to cover the cost of whatever the jug of the wine cost him, or the leather of the animal cost him. So too, they explain here, so too, let's say the buyer. The buyer puts his eyes on the leather, or he puts his eyes on the jug. Kigan Shu Ma'abed, he's a Ma'abed Aros, he's a tanner. So he appreciates the leather. Or he's a potter, he appreciates the jug. In these scenarios as well, so then the jug and the leather, that which he's spending money on it, they don't go to chulin. Rather, you have to compensate yourself for the money that you're spending on it and use that to buy produce of Meiser Sheni. Ha'agozim v'hashakedim, one who is purchasing walnuts or almonds with money of Meiser Sheni, Yatsu klipeim lechulin, their peels, the shells, they go to chulin, and it's permitted mutal ishtamish b'klipasim. You can use their shells b'cholakav for whatever you want. It's okay. Temed is they would put water on the peels and on the seeds of grapes that were squeezed, and then when it would sit there for a while, it would turn into this, this flavorful water, or this flavorful wine, however you want to look at it. So before it got its flavor, one cannot spend money of Meiser Sheni on it because it looks like it has a lacha of water. And water, you don't use Meiser Sheni to buy water. But once it has the flavor and it turns into this juice, you could buy with money Meiser Sheni and drink it in Yerushalayim. No different if you were drinking beer in Yerushalayim with kesef of Meiser Sheni. Mishnah Daled Halokeach Chaya Lazivchei Shlamim. So one who used the money of Meiser Sheni to buy with it a wild animal for a carbon shlamim. Now we know a chaya is not brought as a carbon, or the other way around again. Behema lebasat haiva. He buys a domesticated animal just for his own enjoyment, so he's switching it around. Normally the chaya is for your enjoyment, the behema is for the mizbeach as a carbon, but he swapped them around. He bought the behema just l'shachta for chulin and to eat it and enjoy. So the Chachamim said that shelo yiklu behema because of Meiser Sheni. A person should not be buying a behema, domesticated animal, with money of Meiser Sheni unless he's using it for a carbon shlamim. Because the Yerushalmi explains that initially they would say, buy whatever you want, it's okay, enjoy it, domesticated, non-domesticated, or non-domesticated and even domesticated. Even though normally domesticated goes on the mizbeach as a carbon, you can buy it and enjoy it with money of Meiser Sheni. But then the Chachamim saw that people were all spending their money on these behemos, and no one was bringing it on the Mizbeach. They deprived the Mizbeach of their kabbanos. So they made a gezer that no, if you're buying a behema, domesticated animal with money of Meiser Sheni, it's got to be brought as a carbon shlamim. So this guy, he takes the wild animal, the chaya, he says, I'll use this, for the carbon shlamim, but we know you can't bring a chaya as a carbon shlamim. Or he says, I'll buy a behema, I just want to enjoy it, I don't want to bring it as a carbon. Says the Mishnah, Lo Yatza Ha'ar Lechulin. In these scenarios, the leather is not going to go to chulin, just become non-sacred. The kedusha of Meiser Sheni does not take effect not on the wild animal, the chaya, nor on the behemoth, the domesticated animal. Since he bought it shaloi kedin against the halacha, so tzarech ligach eichel ach, he has to buy an entirely new food keneged the chaya, according to the value they spent on the chaya, or according to the value they spent on the behema, and to eat it with the kedusha of Meiser Sheni. Even if he spent $10,000 on this animal for money of Meiser Sheni, it's garnished, it's nothing. You gotta spend another $10,000 on produce or on something which is befitting to hold the kedusha of Meiser Sheni and then eat in Yerushalayim. Kadayayin pesuchos. One who buys with money of Meiser Sheni jugs of wine that are pesuchos, that are open. Meaning it was normal that one would bring the buyer would come with a jug and the seller would pour the wine into the jug of the buyer. This is called kadayayim pesuchos, jugs of wine that are open. So one who is doing so, and he's using money of Meiser Sheni, but he didn't bring his jug with him. So he pays with his money of Meiser Sheni also for the value of the jug. Or stumos. Or shalagach chadayayin stumos, he bought jugs of wine that are sealed with a lid. Where makom shedarkan li machar pesuchos, in a place that it was the norm to sell wine without a jug. And this buyer of halokeach, the buyer kadyayin stuma, he paid mishalim demei kankan nosef al mechir yayin. He paid for the wine and he paid for the jug itself. So in these scenarios, again, lo yatza kankan lechulin. The jug is not chulin. Hoyel v'shilim b'mo, since he paid with money of Meiser Sheni for the value of this jug. Chala alav kedushas Meiser. What happens is that the kedusha of Meiser Sheni is going to take effect on the jug, but the jug, you can't drink a jug, you drink what's inside, not the actual jug. So one would have to take the money of the value of that jug and spend it on produce in Yerushalayim to eat it as Ma'aser Sheni to compensate the Ma'aser Sheni account, because again, in these scenarios, every dime of the Ma'aser Sheni has to be used properly. And just buying a jug is not going to work. Lo yotza kan l'chulin. The jug does not go to chula, meaning it's keeping its sanctity of Ma'aser Sheni. So therefore, you have to take the money that you spend on the jug, evaluate what it is, and spend it on produce or on actual wine, and have that in Yerushalayim. Salei zeisim v'salei aravim im hakli. One who buys with money Ma'aser Sheni a basket of olives or a basket of grapes together with the sal, with the basket itself. The value of the kli is not going to be chulin, because they always sold the olives and the olives and grapes. They always sold it without a basket, and therefore one who's paying for the basket, the value does not go to chulin, and therefore one would have to purchase connected the value that he spent on the basket, food, and eat it in Yerushalayim as well.